I ranked 15 popular Auckland suburbs from S tier, the best places to buy investment properties right now, all the way down to F tier, the places I'm not even interested in looking. And I'm gonna warn you up front, some of these rankings are gonna make people pretty angry. Just last week, I had a guy go on my website and submit a complaint form because he didn't like my TikTok where I called out the worst places to invest in New Zealand. But you guys keep asking for this episode. So today, we'll start by ranking all 15 suburbs, including where we got the data from and how you can get it for free too, so that by the end, you'll know exactly which Auckland suburbs are worth looking at and which ones you can walk straight past. We are going to rank 15 Auckland suburbs today, from best to worst. We're going to put it into a classic YouTube tier list from S tier all the way to F tier.
What's S tier? I always forget that.
Superior.
Superior. So
well, it could be supreme. Who knows? But I thought it was superior.
So S is the best. A, B, C, D, F.
And there's no
Where's
E.
A?
No, E's for Edward, so it must be excellent anyway.
Do they actually take that out, or have you just forgotten it?
No, often people take E out. You know, we don't need too many tiers
these days.
But how are we going to rank suburbs? Well, we're probably going to need to start by looking at where the location is. We're going to need to look at where what the long-term growth has been, how much house prices have gone up, maybe the yield, and also house prices. Are they really high or low? And throughout the whole episode, we're going to use Area Analyzer. Remember, this is a tool that we've released for you guys where you can check the data on any suburb in the country, over 1,000 suburbs in here. And we're going to use it today to pull up the data for all of the suburbs we want to rank. Now, I always get nervous, Andrew, because you always start yelling at me, telling me that I'm getting it wrong, but hopefully we're going to be nice today. Right, we're going to start with Mount Wellington. Where are you going to put that?
So with Mount Wellington, you've got an average estimated yield of 3.7%, which is kind of which is higher than kind of the market as a whole. But you know, I'm not saying that you can go buy any property here and consider it a good investment, or in any of these areas. None of these are your sign off to go and buy any property in this area or not buy a property in the area. The average house price is under 900 grand. I'd consider that pretty good. The long-term capital growth is 6.4%. The thing to remember about Auckland growth rates at the moment, the long-term average, is you're talking about roughly 20 years worth of data, and you've just had a 20% drop there. So you're basically 1% lower than if we hadn't had a major drop recently. So that could be over 7%, or that would be over 7% had we not had that big drop. So I think that's pretty strong. So I'd probably put this in a category B. You've got Sylvia Park nearby, train station nearby, lots of jobs. You're close to the CBD. I like that area.
And I suppose the reason we might not put it higher is because while there are some really good things about it, I actually think there are some better suburbs out there at the moment. Now, what do you think about Drury? Because this is really far south, right? And really close to the Bombay Hills and around about where Pukekohe is. But people have been getting quite excited about Drury because there's talk about there being a lot more development down there. Now, it's quite hard to get data for there because there's not much going on at the moment. All we know is that about 1,600 people live in them and maybe a quarter of them or so rent. So where would you put Drury?
So with Drury, I often look at these areas and think about, okay, well, is this the next Rolleston? With all this infrastructure planned, is that going to bring a whole lot more jobs and opportunities and people wanting to live there? Maybe, but at the moment, you can't. You're basically making a guess, and whilst it might play out that way, it also might not as well, and then you're just left with a paddock and maybe an investment property that no one actually wants to rent. So I'd probably say there might be some opportunities. I'd watch that over the next 10 years, but I think probably it's a D.
Yeah, the other thing is it can be quite hard to get good tenants and property managers down in those places that are really, really far away from the central city. But it's really a bet on the next kind of 10 to 20 years. I want to talk about Orakei as well. This is actually where I live in Orakei.
Look at that nice picture of it.
Yeah, I know. You got the boat sheds down there. And if we look, I'll pull up the data because I did take this into consideration when I decided to buy there. We've got really expensive house prices. Average property price there is over $2 million. Average rent very low, just under $900. Estimated yield of just over 2%. But the long-term capital growth rate has been really, really good. And if you look at where it is, it's really close to the central city. In fact, Orakei has had one of the better capital growth rates of Auckland suburbs, which is one of the reasons why I was like, oh, wouldn't mind going in there, especially because it's so close. But what do you think about it as an investment?
Well, I mean, because you're paying such high prices to buy there, and look, let's face it, rent has somewhat of a ceiling. That's what brings down that yield. I think you'd be spending you'd be far better off buying $2 million properties in one of the other locations and probably getting, maybe a 50% more collective rent. I think that's Ed. I think it's a wonderful place for you to live in, but I don't think it's a rental property.
Now, there's something important to mention, though, because when we're talking about best and worst suburbs, we're really talking about the average property, what we see as the average, because I know for a fact your property team has actually been sniffing around properties in Orakei at the moment, trying to find land to build some good investment properties. And so a lot of people say, well, you've just said it's a D tier, not a great suburb to invest in, and now your property team's sniffing around properties there. So what's what?
I know. And then also, I'll give you another good example. We said the other day, we wouldn't recommend Wanaka as a general area at the moment for investment because on the whole, most of the properties there are so expensive and the yields are so low as a consequence that it doesn't make sense. Does that mean that every property is bad there? Absolutely not. In fact, at the same time we were saying that on the podcast, I knew the property team were looking at some properties and negotiating some prices for some properties in Wanaka, which look like wonderful investments. So you just got to be careful when we are talking about things, we are talking about averages. Not every property in an area we recommend is a good investment. Similarly, not every area that we say, no, that's an area that overall, on average, we wouldn't recommend, doesn't mean everything there is going to be a bad investment.
Well, I suppose it's just that we say, where do we think that there are the highest number of opportunities right now?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities elsewhere as well. We need to speed this up. What about somewhere like Mount Albert? Where are you going to put Mount Albert?
Mount Albert, I really like this area at the moment. There's a lot of new development going on, affordable land. The government through KO are getting rid of a whole bunch of dirt there at reasonable prices. Developers are able to build there relatively cheaply. Long-term capital growth, 6.3%, similar to kind of other areas that we've been talking about. Yields are relatively low here, but that's based on the average house price being 1.2. I know there's a lot more affordable properties, and your average rent there is probably not a reflection of the average property. I reckon that's probably an A, to be honest.
Okay, the other good thing about Mount Albert is it actually is really, really central.
So close to town.
Which is somewhat surprising. You've got a pretty good school zone there with mags as well, that I think there are some really good opportunities if you can find them in Mount Albert. What about somewhere like Avondale? Avondale's relatively close to Mount Albert, so does that make it A tier as well?
So the interesting thing about Avondale is your long-term capital growth is a little bit lower. I mean, it's still 6%, and again, coming off the back of probably a percent drop off the long-term average. But I probably, because of that, I'm just going to pull that down to a B tier.
And Andrew, I'll just mention, I had somebody email me the other day. I tried to call them back, actually. They never text me back or call me back. Yeah. But they're really upset about, I was talking about the worst places to buy a house in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And of course, it's all the very lovely picturesque places, right?
Which we love to visit, we love to go to.
But wouldn't necessarily invest there. And so we look at this as cold, hard-nosed investors, right? Now, that doesn't mean that you're an idiot for buying a house in these areas, especially if you've got to live in it. But people love to know, well, what do you think is a good place and what do you think is a bad place? And so because you guys keep asking about it, we tell you, even though I then get emails and texts telling me that I'm an idiot. Which is also true. I mean, they're just wonderful judge of characters.
Just not about this.
Okay, Warkworth. I want to talk to you about Warkworth because this is a place I'll never forget being in the Remuera tennis club changing rooms.
Oh, you're so bougie, aren't you?
No. The Remuera tennis club is not.
Not.
It's not bougie. It's not a bougie place. I loved it, but it's not a bougie place. And I remember hearing two people say, Warkworth. Warkworth is the next place to be. Now, remember, Warkworth, let me pull that up for you, is really far north of Auckland, right? It's probably like an hour drive, but there has been development there and people saying this is the next place to be. What do you think about it?
Long-term capital growth, 5.6%. Again, maybe this
Pretty
is
low, eh?
really low. One
Really
of these
low.
areas where maybe there might be some future growth at a faster rate because of the fact that it's been kind of held back and now there's development going on there. The yield's not bad. The average yield's not bad. The average sale price not that bad. But again, I kind of think that you're probably hanging your hat on what might happen. I think there's more chance of this taking off than Drury. Well, certainly there's more certainty around it.
There's a lot more development happening in
yeah.
Warkworth right now,
yeah.
right? And in terms of the people living there, about 6,000 rather than 2,000 in Drury.
So it's not a D, but I wouldn't go as high as a B. I think there's a C.
Honestly, I'll do it because I like you, but I think I'm scathing about Warkworth. Eh?
Why?
I'm like, because people see the supply and then think, well, there's so many houses being built, must be a good idea. I'm like, all I see there is more and more supply. And the other thing about Warkworth is it is so far north, right?
How long does it take to drive there?
It'd be like an hour, roughly an hour, depending on your traffic. And so I can see much more reason for investing in like a Pukekohe compared to a Warkworth in my mind.
I tell you what,
it might as well be South Whangarei, right?
With the petrol prices the way they are, maybe people won't be that excited about it.
Then you get people move to Warkworth being like, oh, it'll be lovely, and then they complain about having to drive into the city. What about some good suburbs? What are your top suburbs?
Okay, let's talk about some of the estates. Actually, now that I'm re-looking at this, because I know I'm going to put Onehunga at S tier. I think that's a great area. I think there's so many opportunities there.
Onehunga used to be quite dodgy.
I know,
but it's actually getting really nice.
It's changed so much in the 20 years that I've been, working with Aucklanders and investing there. I actually am going to move Mount Albert actually to be comparable. I actually think I probably understated the opportunity there, particularly around how close to town it is. Another area that I'd rank as an S tier is an area that I've just settled a property in. This thing, the whole development rented out within a week. It was a record project for the property management team in terms of renting, and that's New Windsor.
Now, where is New Windsor? Because I live in Auckland, but I don't even know where New Windsor is.
So chuck it into your maps and so you can see it exactly.
Oh, so it's quite close to Mount Albert and Avondale.
And it's kind of, it's a really nice established area. There's some really nice streets there. I think there's going to be some good opportunity there. The prices are a little bit higher on average, but I think again, I wouldn't let that suggest that that's the average property. Again, you're not buying the average property there. You're probably buying something a bit more affordable, which will bring up that yield. I think that this is an area where you're going to see more development with the unitary plan changes, and I think you're going to really see an evolving.
I thought you were going to speed this up. Honestly, you keep on going on.
All right.
Mangere Bridge.
What else we got? Mangere Bridge. Let's put that as an A tier. I mean, great growth, great yield, great gentrification. I'd also probably say at that point, I'd probably put Mount Roskill in an A tier as well.
Now, Mount Roskill is kind of quite close to these areas that you quite like. So you're kind of liking this inner city-ish.
City fringe. You don't want to go... city fringe for Auckland. You might be 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes away from the CBD, which is close to town from an Aucklander standpoint. But there are some really good developments going on in these areas. And for convenience, you're close to amenities, you're close to public transport, close to jobs like, the hospitals and other, hubs. I really like that kind of, these parts of Auckland.
I suppose the other thing is that as Point Chev, and I'll just show you where that is. Point Chev is just on the other side of the motorway to Mount Albert, right?
And when I say I like these areas, what I mean by that is people who are buying a property in the future are probably going to like these areas, and so are your tenants, and that's what matters to me. I like what's going to make me money.
Whereas if we think about so Mount Albert and some of the suburbs you like are around here, just on the other side of Point Chev. Point Chev is starting to get real expensive now, right? Because it's right next to the bougie suburbs like Westmere, which is honestly, you can't buy a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house in Westmere these days for less than $2 million. So Point Chev starts to get more expensive, and then we start to see it come round to Avondale and Mount Albert. It's probably not there right now, right? but it's about the trend of what we're tending to see in the future, which is when house prices get really expensive in the expensive areas, people start to move out, they start to gentrify, they get a bit nicer. Okay, what about Auckland Central? So this is about us. You've been talking about how the central city, very important to be close to there. But where are you going to put Auckland Central? Surely that'll be an S tier as well.
That's an F. That's definitely an F because you got lots of apartments, you got lots of competition, you got high body corporate fees. You might have a lot of leasehold properties. The long-term capital growth is terrible, like 3%. Like that is horrific. Even if you add 1% on, it's only 4%. Average house value, that's relatively low because lots of apartments. But I think if I were going to buy an Auckland Central, it'd be because I'm buying an apartment to live in. There ain't no way I'm investing there.
Well, unless you were specifically buying to get really good rental returns and cash flow, right? And you were like, hey, I know that my house value might not go up much at all, right? Like if we look at Auckland Central, I'll just pull it back out.
Actually, that's a fair statement because someone said
a fair statement.
Someone said the other day, they often criticise the areas around just looking for income. Yes, that's true because I am biased because I'm an investor that wants as much wealth as possible.
But I think a lot of people do tend to buy because they want the house value to increase.
Yes.
Or that's an important consideration. But if we look at since 2018, house prices at Auckland Central have continued to fall. Like you basically got very, very little increase from the COVID boom, but yet you've still seen the downturn. And so that's just the risk that I think people forget about with apartments. And I suppose one thing that we get our knickers in a twist about is when people try and sell apartments saying, it'll go up like at 6% like everything else, where that's just not true.
Yeah.
But if you are searching for income, Auckland Central could be a really good place to look.
What else you got on that list for me? And
you got four more to go through. We've got Takapuna.
A lovely area, high value properties, low yields. Again, this is a place that I'd absolutely live, not a place I'd invest, generally speaking. So I put that as a D.
Okay, we've got three more.
Yep.
Titirangi, which I must admit, this is another place where I'm an Aucklander. You know what? I fairly feel like I can say that as well, even though I've lived in Auckland for almost 15 years now.
Is it 15 years?
Well, I first moved there when I was 15 years old, right? I spent a little bit of time in Hamilton, a little bit of time in Christchurch, but actually I always thought I was still from Taranaki until, I thought, I probably am an Aucklander now. Now, Titirangi is kind of really nice. It's in West Auckland, round by the coast. It's kind of one road in, one road out. People like living there. Where are you putting it as an investment?
A low long-term growth, a relatively low yield. Again, it might be a great place to live, but it's a D for an investment for me.
And we've got two more. Birkdale. Birkdale is in...
Birkdale, sure. Birkdale, I'm all about. A top 10% of suburbs for capital growth, top 25% for yield. Some great development going on there. I think gentrification happening. This is doing all the right things for me. I would absolutely put this as an A tier.
Okay.
Maybe even an S tier. Maybe even an S tier.
No, you've put too many at S tier. I'm not
okay,
letting you.
Fine.
Honestly, no, you want to put everything at S tier.
No, I don't. Not
great
everything.
Location.
No,
and the last one we've got.
Last one I'm going to put. What have we got there?
Let me get Howick up first.
I can't read it.
It's Howick.
Average house price relatively high. Long-term growth again going below that 6%. I'm going to go. I probably would have said B if the growth was a bit higher. So I'm going to put it as C.
Okay, so there are our rankings. You're saying in S tier is Onehunga, Mount Albert, New Windsor, A tier, Mangere Bridge, Mount Roskill and Birkdale, but you wouldn't touch Auckland Central.
Absolutely not. And look, again, I don't want you to take this list and say, right, anything that I buy in Onehunga or Mount Albert or New Windsor, that's a no-brainer investment. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that
this is where there could be opportunities.
Yeah, more opportunities than Auckland Central and vice versa. Auckland Central doesn't mean that if you own something there, you're a fool. It just probably means it's either right for you or maybe there are better opportunities elsewhere.
And if you want help looking for properties in these areas, then you might like to work with a financial advisor, or you might like to book a meeting with us and tell us we're wrong. So all you have to do is go to the Opus Partners website, click the big orange button to book your free session. You'll be able to choose your financial advisor and choose a time that suits you, because those are some of the areas where our team at Opus Property are looking for properties right now. So now you know which Auckland suburbs are worth your time and which ones to walk straight past, but Auckland is just one piece of the puzzle, because some of the best opportunities in the country right now, they're not even in Auckland at all, which is why I also ranked every New Zealand city for property investment, again from S tier all the way down to F tier, and some of those rankings, oh look, these ones are going to make people even angrier. So click the video on screen and watch it now.